Thanks, Spokes. I'm just going to enter on one issue only, President. I think it's on the issue which was raised by Lizek on where must the National Treasury get the money from. Because there's been some kind of a view that South Africa is entering into a fiscal crisis. And this is a point the Youth League has made, that there is no such thing, that South Africa is having some fiscal crisis. There's no such. There's no such because evidence is pointing out throughout the world that when you are dealing with a fiscal crisis, or when you are dealing with fiscal management, you are dealing with three interrelated things. One is the taxes. Two is government expenditure. Three is government debt. Now, debt to GDP in South Africa is below 100%. But debt to GDP in Japan is around 200%. So where must the National Treasury get the money to fund all these developmental initiatives that the Youth League is proposing? You know, education, massive infrastructure development, injection of capital in the economy to grow it. The money is there in the international debt capital markets. That's number one. To borrow money for productive purposes. Not for consumptive purposes, but for productive purposes, because the net effect of investing, you are investing in the skills of the country, you are investing in the productiveness of the economy, of the workforce of the economy. Now, that is not a consumptive spending or borrowing. Now, so we don't understand when a person says there is a fiscal crisis in South Africa when we have not exhausted government bonds. By the way, the Youth League has argued that we need to review the Reserve Bank Act, actually, in order for us to be able to have our own government bonds within the South African shores. What happens now in South Africa? That is why we said the problem of South Africa at the moment is at a macroeconomic level. Because you can't say that you will be a sovereign country when your majority of your bonds sit elsewhere offshore in other, international debt capital markets. When you have an instrument called the central bank, your own central bank, but your own central bank cannot buy your own bonds in order for you as government to have the necessary capital to inject in these particular important instruments like education and massive industrialization in order to grow the economy. I mean, these are areas that we are saying the Reserve Bank must wake up. We're saying actually the governor of the Reserve Bank is sleeping on duty. Sleeping on duty. All he does is to increase interest rates when he wants to, lower inflation in the country. He's an inflation targeting fundamentalist. He doesn't want to grow the economy. He has no clear view of how to use the central bank to create full employment in the economy, to grow the economy in South Africa, to manage interest rates, because the cost of accessing capital in South Africa, the cost of accessing capital, very high. Meaning it's expensive to access capital in South Africa. And people who are managing that is the commercial banks. And these same commercial banks are manipulating the currency of the country, which is the country's currency, and thereby affecting the growth and development of the South African economy. So these are the issues when we are saying the governor of the Reserve Bank is sleeping on duty. He's a liability, and we're calling for the president to actually remove the governor. Kganyago is sleeping on duty. There is no governor of any Reserve Bank who would want to be recused from the manipulation of his own country's currency. He wants to be recused. He says, no, it's an issue of competition commission. But who is managing the country's money, the country's economy, the country's currency? It's the Reserve Bank and the National Treasury. And the president is correct. If they are not acting on the banks that have manipulated the economy, which is a treason in any country. Where you manipulate the currency of that particular country, it means you have damaged its economy, you have devaluated the rand, and subsequently, if you look into the dollar-rand exchange, it means the rand has suffered over the period. And therefore, South Africa did not earn any hard currency over the period, because what happened is that the dollar-rand exchange was very low, meaning the rand was low compared to the dollar over the period. So where we are trading with the other currencies, the rand was weaker. It means it has affected the economy. So the National Treasury can never come out and say this has not affected the South African economy over the period where they have admitted, the president is saying, they've admitted the commercial banks that they've manipulated the rand. That is why the Youth League would have made a proposal to the president that, President, you must begin to take bold steps supporting banks like African Bank. Take all our accounts, the government accounts, into a bank like the African Bank that has not participated in the sabotage of the South African economy, as we see. Because these people who are saying they're representing commercial banks, as the president has said, now you have a Jardine who comes out and wants to be a paragon of good governance, or some kind, portraying himself to be a candidate of corporate. Candidate of which corporate? The one that has just manipulated the rand, that is sabotaging the economy, that is running a regime change in South Africa. And we still are not acting. People like the National Treasury Minister, they are dilly-dallying. They're saying, no, it's an issue of DTIC. Because Competition Commission is an entity of DTIC. You can't say the currency, people who should be looking at the currency, is DTIC. That can never happen in any country. So I think, Lizeka, in answering your questions, we have made several proposals in terms of the reforms that must happen, and the Youth League has expressed itself on those particular issues. I think, thank you very much, folks.
The DSG is going to come forth and speak on the NSFAS issue, and then we'll take any follow-up questions afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you, spokesperson, and greetings to the media and everyone who's here. Like the president said, we have a problem here, wherein you have children of the poor who are supposed to access institution of higher learning, and then we have a department that sit somewhere and decide to cut the budget of NSFAS. NSFAS is the only vehicle that the poor children of this country depends on, and it's funding children that are part of SASA, that are dependent on the state for survival. Now, if we are saying that we are cutting the budget of NSFAS, what we are actually saying to children of this country who have hope, who are also the future of the country, we are saying that you do not have the future anymore, you cannot access institutions of higher learning anymore, education of this country is not for you, it's for those that are rich. We are now going back, we are not going forward. So the ANC Youth League will not sit back and watch people take us back. We want to move forward as a country. Hence we are saying that we are against the cut of budget of NSFAS. We can't allow that. It can never happen in our lifetime. So now, what we are saying is that there must be a way that we go and find money to fund education of young people of this country. We have resolved as an ANC Youth League that we must enter into the stage of reindustrialization and industrialization. Now, if we don't equip young people with education, where are we going to have expertise that we need to grow the economy of the country? Because now we must be at the stage wherein we are saying skill, reskill young people. Now when we are taking the vehicle of skilling young people to become fully fledged people that we want, drivers of the economy, what are we then saying to the country? Are we saying that we are ready to see this country to go into collapse? What we are saying, we are re-emphasizing as the ANC Youth League is that our role is to guard the interest of young people. And we're not going to fail in that role. We're not going to keep quiet when people are making sure that the role of the ANC Youth League is disturbed. The youth of this country need to be educated. There is no country in this world that has ever achieved anything with uneducated youth. Young people must be educated. The role of young people is to learn through education. And we are going to make sure as the ANC Youth League that that role is not compromised. Thank you.
Thank you, DSG. If there are no other further questions, we thank you. This brings us to the end of the press briefing.